Good morning. It is Monday, April 10th. Let's adjourn the Public Safety Commission meeting. We have a roll call, please.
Commissioner Desmarais, Commissioner Munoz, Commissioner Cervantes, Commissioner G, Vice Chair Watson,
Present.
Chair Donnelly.
Present. Commissioner Ashraf will not be with us today. Do we have any public comment?
There is no public comment.
Okay. Is Councilmember Cacciati online? Okay. Let's move forward, and if he does join us, we will welcome him for his communications later. So first order of business to approve the minutes of the previous meeting on March 13th. Did anyone have any notes or edits? No. Can we have a motion to approve the minutes as submitted?
Motion to approve the minutes as submitted.
Commissioner G, in a second. Commissioner Cervantes. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Desmarais,
In favor.
Commissioner Munoz, Commissioner Cervantes, Commissioner G, Vice Chair Watson,
Approve.
Chair Donnelly.
Approved. Motion is approved. Let's move right into a presentation regarding an arson canine vehicle. Chief?
Commissioners, good morning. So this morning's report, we're seeking approval from the Public Safety Commission to move this item forward to council. And I want to be clear that there's some information that we don't have currently, and I'll explain where we're going to be missing some pieces. And ultimately, when we get to council, there'll be more of a deep dive. And I'll point out those areas that we weren't able to gather all the specific information on this vehicle. But in concept, we're asking for your support to just move this along to the city council for further consideration. And what's being considered is for the fire department to work alongside the Los Angeles Fire Foundation through to receive grant funding to get a arson detection canine vehicle for our current arson handler. And just give you a little background on our program and how the partnership has developed through the years with the LA Area Fire Foundation, as well as State Farm Insurance Agency. Our arson program has actually been in service since the early 1990s. We have been part of the LA Area Regional Task Force since the early 90s. Our current arson investigator has been with us for 7 years. He was a lateral firefighter paramedic from San Bernardino County Fire, where he served as one of their arson investigators for over 10 years. So he currently is the lead investigator for our program. And again, he actively participates in the LA Area Regional Arson Task Force. And the partnership with LA Area Fire Foundation and State Farm started to develop in early 2020, right when the start of COVID happened. And that's when an opportunity was brought to us through grant funding to receive an accelerant detection canine, and which we ended up receiving. And that detection canine unit is in service today. Her name's Delta. If you haven't met her, welcome to come by and meet her. She's a 3-year-old black lab. And really that resource has been an amazing resource for the region. There were 3 arson canines provided to the LA region. South Pasadena, the city of Compton, and LA County Fire were all given through grant process an arson detection canine. So in that process, State Farm has reached out through the LA Firefighters Foundation with another grant opportunity. For those 3 agencies who receive those canines, there's now an opportunity to receive an arson detection canine vehicle. These are standard vehicles. They're trucks, usually like an F4 or F-150. And there's specialized resources where they're outfitted, where the dog can be safely transported in the back of the truck with a shell. Cages are built in. And there's also all the compartments that go along with all the all the tools and equipment that are necessary for our arson investigator to carry when they respond out and they investigate fires. And where we're lacking in information, how the process works is State Farm funds these programs, and their ultimate goal is to lower and lessen the fire losses throughout the nation that are due to arson. So they give these grant funds and they direct them to agencies throughout the United States. There's over 300 agencies in the United States that have received both the arson vehicle as well as the arson detection canines. They support the funding. The funding is given to the LA Area Fire Foundation, which is a 501c3. And then the LA Fire Foundation identifies departments in the LA region that have a need, and then the funds are distributed that way through the 501c3. Keep the lines very clean and the grant process very clean. Since making the introduction and the initial agreement with our arson detection canine, a lot of opportunities have developed in addition to this vehicle. Once we seek this vehicle, if we were successful in obtaining this grant funded vehicle, there's a lot of other equipment and resources that are going to become available through this grant process. Automatic CPR devices, all types of extrication equipment, things that are related to structure firefighting, to EMS, anything to support 911 based services in LA County. So this report this morning is pretty limited on information, but in concept, we're asking for your support to just further this concept for us to bring this to council. Most likely it'll be about 2 months before we actually bring it to council, where we can plug in all the holes, all the missing pieces we have as far as, is there an option to have alternative fuel vehicles? Is there an option to have electric vehicles? We would be in support of that, but we have to play within the rules of this grant. And they weren't able to give us all those details yet because Compton and LA County have already received their vehicles. They went with just a standard gas vehicle. They weren't overly concerned with any options for alternate fuel. We want to look at that. We want to maintain our city's views and goals to maintain that level of new vehicles coming into our fleet being electric vehicles when we have the option to do that. So being that the report's a little limited, that in concept is what we're asking, and I'm happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Yes, how much is the grant? If the grant doesn't completely cover the more environmentally sound vehicle, where would the rest of the balance come from? And who typically writes the grants?
So that's a great question. The grant is being, first of all, I'll go backwards. The grant is being written by State Farm Insurance, that they're the underwriters of the grant process. The grant monies are being generated through their own corporation. And the monies are being distributed to the LA Area Fire Foundation. To the first part of your question, there is no cap at this point, right? So they look at the need first. They've identified the need. And then once the need is, once we start working with the LA Area Fire Foundation on what we would like, what we're requesting, they will look at the cost and ultimately approve that. And that's the key question right there, is what we're going to have to identify. Number one, is there even an option for alternative fuel by the time we get to council? If there's not, the standard vehicles have a set price. That set price has been anywhere, usually it's between $40,000 and $50,000 when they're fully outfitted, and they have covered that cost 100%. And once the city takes ownership of that vehicle, it's no different than any other grant funded resource. We would hold on, we would maintain the vehicle, we would insure the vehicle, we would register the vehicle. And it wouldn't be until the point that the vehicle was no longer serviceable, and we would recycle that resource through the grant process as you normally would.
Yes, you said we already have the dog here in the station for that.
Yes, we've had our detection canine for about 2 years now. She has responded on well over 200 fires. and has been successful in, her role is to confirm the use of a flammable liquid that was used on a potential arson fire. So she has been successful on about 98% of the fires that she's brought in on to confirm that there was in fact a use of flammable liquid. So it's a resource in the process of determining the ultimate cause of the fire. And she's been very, very successful in that. Again, we work with all the agencies in LA County. We respond as needed. Most of the time, our investigator is on duty. Currently, he is using his personal vehicle. He has a Suburban. It's his personal vehicle. And what we have done is we set up with the city a process where he seeks reimbursement for the mileage or the cost of maintenance on his vehicle. The city pays for all of the care and maintenance for the dog itself and the annual training. So everything else is covered, but the bottom line is he's still driving his personal vehicle to respond. That personal vehicle is not outfitted with emergency lights and siren either. So he's just driving like a normal citizen to get to some of these incidents. They don't all require lights and sirens, but there may be a time in need where he would need to get to a call, and the proposed vehicle would have lights and siren.
Is this person, the investigator, also the handler of the dog, that the dog lives with him, or how is that done?
Yes, so he is one of our current firefighter paramedics, and the dog is assigned to him full time. So it's a take-home dog. The dog lives with him. So he transports the dog to and from with them. And then we have an area in the station that she is housed when he's on duty. And when they're on a call, she has an area that she's not in a cage the whole time. She has an area that she can, like a large section of our, one of the upstairs rooms that she lives in while she's at the fire station. So in essence, she has her own quarters at the fire station.
But in the evening, when she's not on duty, does she go home with the handler?
Yes.
Is she like part of the family for
Yes.
him?
Yep. She is not, the way she is trained, she is a reward dog, so she loves to play. Her reward is playing. So absolutely, she is part of, she's part of his family. And quite frankly, that's been an kind of we didn't expect that to be an added benefit of having the dog in the fire station, but city staff and as well as the firefighters, it's been a real morale booster to have, a dog around and kind of adding a new kind of a break in the mundane work schedule, if you will.
And last question. Is this dog, is this service shared by other areas, let's say San Gabriel or San Marino or whatever, in case of need? Do we share that?
Yes, so we are part of a regional task force, which includes, really includes all 31 agencies in LA County. But from an immediate response, the departments from Burbank to Sierra Madre down to Montebello would be an immediate request. So there's 13 agencies, including Burbank Airport, where they could request it right now, goes through our dispatch, and Delta could be dispatched immediately to go respond and help investigate a fire. And it's reciprocal. All these other agencies have arson investigators as well that are part of that team. So he's not the only one, but he is the only one currently with a detection canine.
Yeah, so this animal actually is serves multi-purpose. It's like he's immediate. He goes into where there's fires, as I understand, since you mentioned what you call having the car having the capability of going through in case immediately they need it immediately. Does it have to be immediate, or can it be be brought over after the fire is over, and to check if there was any accelerants involved in this fire?
Good question. Usually, and I say usually because every incident we call it incident driven, but 99.9% of the time, we have the fire knockdown. So the fire is out. And what happens right after we have knockdown of any fire, 100% of the time, we investigate to see if the cause is easily identifiable. Sometimes it's really easy just by the report of the occupant. But a lot of times the cause is unknown. So that's when the captain or the battalion chief, who's ultimately in charge of the fire scene, will make the request for an arson investigator to come out and further investigate the fire to determine whether or not it was accidental or intentionally set. Through that process is when the dog may or may not be requested. If the arson investigator suspects that it is intentional and that the use of flammable liquids were used to light the fire, then the dog would be requested to come out and confirm the use of flammable liquids.
Yeah.
Hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, it sounds like a win-win situation at this point with all you've said. However, my only request would be that if we could make any and every possible try in every possible way for this vehicle to be something that is conforming to the ones that the police is going to get, if possible. Other than that, I think the program, it sounds great. Sounds really good.
Well, to your request, we were part of the initial discussions with the police department, the fire department command staff to receive Teslas as well. Part of that process was that our arson investigator was going to receive, I believe it was the Model Y or the larger models, and we were going to outfit a Model Y to be the K9 unit, which is still an option. The fire department is still in the process of discussions for phase 2. Once the infrastructure is built out, that still may be an option. When we were looking at it, with all the tools and the cage, it's still going to be a pretty tight fit for that to be an arson vehicle. We think this would still be the best option. And so to your point, we will certainly strive to make sure that this is an all-electric vehicle. It would serve the purpose. They do not respond any farther than the radius of LA County, so it would be applicable to this application. Yes. We could certainly do that. I'd be happy to do that. And the reason why I'm bringing it to you a little early, I didn't want to bring something to you. I wanted to make sure that I could accurately reflect your questions and your concerns in the staff report. So there's kind of a lag delay on when the staff reports are due to be submitted for review. So if we're projecting this to go to council in June, I would have time to give you an update at the next meeting and still have a staff report that reflects what was discussed today. So certainly I could do that.
Can we have a motion to approve this to move forward to city council?
Yeah, I motion for approval to city council.
Commissioner Watson and Commissioner Cervantes. We have a roll call vote.
Commissioner Desmarais,
In favor.
Commissioner Munoz, Commissioner Cervantes, Commissioner G, Vice Chair Watson,
In favor.
Chair Donnelly.
In favor. Thank you, Chief. And now we have a report regarding the CERT program. Welcome back.
I had to walk away to get my PowerPoint reference. Yeah, so this report or this update on the city's CERT program and Neighborhood Watch program is something we like to do every year for the Public Safety Commission and remind everybody the program we have in place, the history of the program, the intent of the program, offer the program to anyone who would like to go through our CERT program and really answer any questions. We do get a lot of questions. Probably our number one question is related to emergency preparedness in terms of, is the city prepared for any type of emergency, whether it be earthquake, windstorm, brush fires. And it's an ongoing process. I'm not going to say that we're 100% there, but one of the components of that is to have a a program, and we have three of them, and I'll touch base on all three of them, that brings the community into that process as well. Because the more that everyone, when I say everyone, the city government, all the citizens, that includes our faith-based, everybody, when we're all working together and realizing that when a disaster hits our community, the more we work together, the better off we're all going to be. Really, there's no room for siloing yourself during a disaster. It's just not effective. So the 2011 windstorm, a lot of people still refer to that event as kind of the catalyst for launching our CERT program and everyone to focus on the fact that we were not prepared for a windstorm of this magnitude by any means. Now, this windstorm in itself it caught a lot of people off guard. I was on duty that night. We had no pre-warning that they were expecting winds over 100 miles an hour to come that night, sustained winds. This was actually, if you look at it historically, it had winds that were matching an F2 tornado, and these were sustained winds. So our city, like I said, I was on duty, and we were running so many calls, and it got to the point where it was really getting chaotic in our city, and it was very dangerous. And I'm actually surprised, and looking back, very thankful that we didn't get anyone seriously hurt, whether they were citizens or fire or police personnel, because we had so many power lines down, energized power lines. So it was after the 2011 windstorm that we as a fire department certainly started to work with the community and realize we need to do something better. Not only did we all agree that a CERT program would be great, the police department already had a neighborhood watch program, but we also realized that we needed to upgrade our city's emergency operations center as well. So just a little history on the CERT program. CERT was actually developed by the Los Angeles City Fire Department in 1985. And they graduated their first CERT team in 1986. FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, they took note of this program and eventually adopted it as at the federal level. That's the standard for the community emergency response teams throughout the nation. So the discussion started after the windstorm. We officially launched our program in March of 2014. At the time, the program was supported by initial discretionary fund allocation from, at the time, Mayor Robert Joe. He allocated $5,000 to the program. And then we soon formed an administrative committee to actually form the program and launch our first training. That initial committee was made up of myself, Captain Saxon, who's recently retired, Janet Braun, who currently sits on the City Council, Susan Kaplan, Bob Vanderwall, Dr. Harry Lieberman, and Ellen Daigle. That was the initial administrative committee that launched this program. Here's a picture of the actual first graduating class. It was nice to archive through and look at our first graduating class, which was towards the end of 2014. The classes fluctuate in size, and I'll touch on that at the end of the presentation. But this was our launch and our first graduating class. So you see here, those two pictures kind of get a lot of people's attention. We always think about the earthquake, and we should. We live on a major fault here in South Pasadena, and we also have the risk of wildfire. But as we've seen in recent times, the windstorm being mentioned, it can be anything that causes disruption to the city's infrastructure and our ability to just maintain everyday services. That could be windstorms, it could be power outages, it could be cyber attacks. So the mission of the CERT program and Map Your Neighborhood our mission was to promote hazard identification and mitigation in an effort to minimize the effects of disaster on our community and facilitate recovery. Basically, we were, and we are currently, providing our community a skill set to go and be more resilient, more prepared to prepare for a disaster and recover. And that recovery phase is really where the CERT program puts a lot of energy in, because that's what surprises a lot of people is, we hear it a lot, and not as a complaint, but we hear it as, hey, there was a power outage. We didn't see the fire department. We called 911. We didn't see the fire department for a while, and we talk about that in the CERT training, that if it's a significant disaster, we have 6 firefighters on duty each day. And those resources are going to be tied up very quickly. We're going to triage the calls coming in, but during a very significant, like an earthquake, there may not be fire resources responding for hours, if not days. And by the time we get there's going to be no automatic or mutual aid, because they're responding in their respective areas of protection. We're taking federal resources to arrive from other areas of the state or other states themselves to provide backfill for us to be able to continue to maintain services. So that's that recovery part. The more that we can kind of learn basic skill sets to identify areas that we can be better off in that recovery process, and safer when we're responding to a disaster. That's what we really promote in this program. I know this is small print. I put it up just because it is our actual flyer that goes out, but I'll summarize most of it. We've already talked about the mission statement, the history of the program, who we target. We have some bullet points there, but really we target anyone in the community who would benefit from learning these skill sets. They could be current city employees, they could be neighborhood watch captains, school officials, teachers, anybody in the community with any type of skill set, or really anybody who just wants to be more resilient, more prepared for disaster. Those are who we want to attend our CERT program. These things that we teach in the CERT program are basic disaster preparedness. We talk a lot about potential disasters here in South Pasadena. We train hands-on training in disaster fire suppression, in disaster medical treatment and triaging, the potential for the terrorism component to it, simulated drills. And when I say disaster in front of a lot of these, during a disaster, there is a different approach on how you may triage or treat a medical emergency, and we talk about all that. But more importantly, I think, we get a lot of feedback. We've trained over 500 citizens thus far since 2014. We were on track to train a lot more, but COVID did kind of set us back a little bit. That was 2.5 years of really a shutdown program. But the feedback we get is that homeowners are just really, and business owners are really grateful to bring in questions that are specific to their house. A lot of the participants do not know how to shut off the water to their house. They do not know how to shut off the gas to their house, when to shut off the gas. And we walk through all these scenarios with them, and we show them specifically. We have all those props during it, and they're able to actually manipulate the actual props or the gas lines that they would have at their house, their business, their water meters, things like that. So this flyer kind of points out all those, and at the end, there's a simulated drill. There's 4 simulated drills, actually. A search and rescue drill, which, again, we get a lot of positive feedback on because it's really, we make a pretty good simulation where it's blacked out 100%. You can't see anything. There's a victim in the room, and you go in as a team, like you would in a neighbor's house, and you're searching for a victim who can't vacate the house. So it's realistic training. There's a couple pictures here later on the slide that will show, just showing on some of the components of the drills that we do. Next slide, please. So the CERT program consists over 3 Saturdays. There's 3 consecutive Saturdays. We host them at the fire station. Each day is approximately 4 hours long. They're not less than 4 hours long. They're at least 4 hours long. 16 hours is the minimum training required. And I say minimum because oftentimes we're going 5 hours simply because there's so many good questions, and no one really wants to leave. They want to keep going with me. And like I said, to date, we've trained over 500 citizens. Can you go back real quick? If it's not, it's okay. You can leave it here. But I want to point out that, so we host 2 to 3 basic classes a year at the fire station, and then we host 2 to 3 refresher trainings. And at the onset of this program, our goal was to create a CERT team and vet the individuals who wanted to be actually part of a team, vet them through background checks, and actually have a response component where we call them out to respond to emergencies within the community. We have not been able to, for a lot of reasons, and I'll touch base on some of those reasons, but we've trained over 500, and basically we're training and releasing back to the community. The amount or the percentage of those who want to continue on into a formal team has been surprisingly low, but I get it. Not everybody wants to commit to be part of a response team. But we found that that's not all bad. Just training and releasing, just that component of getting trained and released back to your areas of the city and start to promote the need for disaster prep has really caught a lot of momentum in the past couple of years. And even though we weren't putting classes through during COVID served to actually promote that as well, because we kind of found ourselves relying on each other in some cases for basic services, especially when it came to ensuring that the elderly population in our community were getting the services they needed, that we weren't forgetting about them. And the CERT graduates were the one working with faith-based to make sure that we were circling back. And so it really kind of promoted this concept. But I just want to point that out because we do get a lot of questions on whether or not what's the difference between a formal CERT team and then a train and release program. We may get there at some point, but at the end, I'll talk about some challenges that we're currently having. These are a couple pictures where you see we're doing fire extinguisher training, and the picture on the left is cribbing, lifting and cribbing of simulated victim underneath a heavy object, and they do all that themselves. So in conjunction with the CERT program, years later, a program called Neighborhood Watch was developed. Not Neighborhood Watch, Map Your Neighborhood. Now, Map Your Neighborhood is taught and promoted in conjunction with both Neighborhood Watch and the CERT program. Our two programs are separate in the city. CERT and Neighborhood Watch are in themselves different programs. Fire department oversees CERT, police department oversees Neighborhood Watch. But we both agree that joining those as much as we can is a good thing. We want to cross-pollinate those programs as much as possible to get interested parties into both sides. They work together hand in hand. Obviously, Neighborhood Watch has its mission statement and its priorities, but during a disaster, those two groups kind of come together. And the more we can get those two groups meshed in the middle prior to the disaster happening, the better off we're going to be. The gist of Map Your Neighborhood is this, that in your areas of the community, whether it's a block captain with Neighborhood Watch, even if it's just 10 houses in your area that have all come together to say, what strengths do we have? What do we bring to the table here? How can we leverage those strengths? Do we have a construction worker who lives on the street? Do we have a doctor? Do we have nurses? Who has a skill set and what resources do they have? And how can we kind of have a little stockpile to where we would be more resilient and be able to recover during a post-disaster? And that's really what it is working with your neighbors to identify who has resources and skill sets that would serve the greater good during a disaster. This was an interesting statistic. I put the lower number, but I've seen numbers that are actually higher, that 70% of all victims are actually rescued and supported during a disaster by other survivors. So, and like I said, the fire department may not be there. If it's a catastrophic event, this number could be a lot higher. This number, I've seen numbers in the 90% on a few of the websites I was reading. That I talked about some challenges. Staffing is probably our number one challenge. We've had, and to no one's fault, it's just through attrition that we've had staffing changes. Those staffing changes, we've had 3 CERT coordinators, and our CERT program is run by on-duty personnel. The CERT coordinator, they do get a 5% bonus in pay, but they're still assigned to their respective duties. So we've had a captain oversee it. Currently, we have an engineer, but we've also had a firefighter paramedic overseeing it. So in addition to their normal duties, they're hosting, they're keeping track of the database, they're organizing the trainings. And so for recent basis, that's been kind of a challenge to keep the program supported on the back end. And I talked a little bit about the train and release versus a formalized CERT team. And at the conclusion, I'll be happy to answer any questions if there are on that. That's probably our number one question, is just getting a clear sense of what that means. Funding is always a challenge. I will say, though, that the city councils who have been elected in since the program was started in 2014 have been an absolute advocate for emergency preparedness. This current city council has also shown a lot of support towards emergency preparedness and the CERT program. The current budget for the CERT program is $5,000. I look at the budget very closely as the fire chief. I think that is a good number for the program because the overall budget of the emergency preparedness fund is $55,000 annually, and that $55,000 covers supplies and equipment for the emergency operations center, includes training of city staff to ensure that they are trained in EOC functionality in their area of responsibility, and it also supports the CERT program. We brought to you a few meetings ago, the emergency operations plan is being updated, the local hazards mitigation plan is being updated. This account supports those updates as well. So I think the city's been very proactive in funding emergency preparedness and emergency management, and the CERT program kind of falls under that with a $5,000 allocation. The opportunities, I really think this is one of those programs where we have a lot of opportunity here to simply promote the program. And I've heard a lot of suggestions, and a lot of them I'm excited to put forward. We still get a lot of interest in the program. On average, we have 15 to 20 participate each class, and we have a very high, usually a 95 or plus graduation rate. And the only time people don't graduate is if they simply can't make it, if they have a personal issue where they can't make it. But we host 3 basic classes a year, 2 to 3 refresher classes. We really want to continue to foster community support. The Public Safety Commission has been a huge supporter of this program over the years. We coordinate with other city departments, other city stakeholders. Our city staff, as they rotate and get new staff members in, they participate in the training as their schedule allows. The city stores include our faith-based. The annual prayer breakfast has been allocating funds from some of the proceeds to emergency management and disaster prep through different supplies and backpacks for the CERT program. And then what's gaining a lot of momentum is the regional approach to CERT training. So we don't officially partner with any other agency, but we communicate with their program managers as well. So San Marino has a program, Alhambra, Monterey Park, all the surrounding agencies have a CERT program. Pasadena LA City. Some of the residents who graduate from those actually live in South Pasadena. That's not a bad thing. It's the same program. And we work closely with those partners to do refresher training, to do coordinator drills where we're bringing in our database of graduates. They have their database of graduates, making sure that we're all working together to maximize the benefits of this program. There's no guarantee that you're going to be home when a disaster hits. You may be at work in another city, and we teach you that in the project. You can be a valuable asset during disaster, and there's a way that to that agency to somehow get plugged into helping that agency or that community recover. So that's my overview in a nutshell. I'd be happy to answer any questions. And yes.
Beth G, Commissioner. May I make my formal Commissioner, it's related to this topic, my formal Commissioner communications and have it double at the same time? Okay, so thank you so much for this presentation. I really love the CERT program and the Map Your Neighborhood program. I have 3 comments. And the first one is regarding projects, the second one regarding publicity, and the third one regarding training. So in regards to a formal project that I'd like to see is to offer a Eagle Scout project for Map Your Neighborhood and ask Eagle Scouts candidates to participate in doing a formal Map Your Neighborhood for a certain square mile in South Pasadena. So as a Scout mom, I'd really like to see that. So that's my first comment. My second comment is on publicity. I was just surfing the South Pasadena City mobile app. It's really hard to find the CERT classes. And it's also really hard to find the ambulance service that citizens, especially our senior citizens, can access. I believe you talked about that a few meetings ago. So publicity-wise, it would be nice to have it easily findable on the app. And also, I think I've spoken to you about having banners. So banners about the CERT classes, banners about the ambulance services along Fair Oaks. So I'd really like to see more publicity. Finally, my third comment is on training. This is a little bit off topic, but I just attended the Advanced Cardiac Life Support program, and I found out that 8%, in Seattle, there's 63% health literacy in terms of basic life support and first aid. In Los Angeles County, we rank 8%, just above Detroit. So I think that the culture of places like Seattle, everybody learns it. It's all the time. Everybody takes classes, everybody takes refresher classes. So I would love to see that culture implemented in South Pasadena and to have a culture of self-learning for the greater community good. So if there's any way we can publicize that, I would love to see that happen. So at least the project, the publicity, and the training. That concludes my comments. Thank you.
I have 2 quick questions, Steve. The $5,000 annual budget, is that from the general fund or is that coming from discretionary?
That's general fund.
Okay.
Yeah, the initial discretionary fund was a one-time, and then the general fund has supported the program.
Okay. So it's not at the whim of council. It's a budget.
It's a budget item.
And to Commissioner G's point, is there a role for Scouts, Lionheart teenage participants, or are they too young?
So no, and that's something we've been actually trying to promote ourselves. Not only with the Eagle Scout program, we've had faith-based working as well. Little different aspect to it, but there's definitely a need to. I'll give you an example of where this could be very helpful. Is basic door-to-door activity is very effective, and where the faith-based was really trying to get traction is they were trying to provide an accurate database to support us in the event of emergency, a database of our of the elderly population in our city. So we would have outreaches through different avenues where we would have that database available to us in the Emergency Operations Center. And at some point that would be prioritized during the disaster to say, okay, now we need to backtrack. We're at a point in the process in the disaster. We need to backtrack and ensure that these individuals on the database are being checked on, that they are okay and not being forgotten about. And just the promotion factor is huge. I mean, we've touched on a couple. When we're quiet, there's no disasters, the interest drops. Then we have a disaster, the interest peaks. And it's our program. So to promote it constantly is a win-win for us. You know, I've taken the suggestions and I'll review that today. I'll look at our website today and see if we can bump it. It's a great idea. I like the basic approach to some things, old-fashioned, just getting the word out. So, but to your original question, there's a need for that, and you know, again, we would support it. We'd like to work alongside those entities to make sure it's being done.
This is regards something we covered previously, and that is the service that fire department offers paramedics, ambulance service to transport somebody to the hospital or whatever. I really think this is under promoted. Many know anything about it, and to me, it is so important, especially and because, you know, it can happen anytime that these kids can get into trouble. You need something done, but if you're older, then we're talking about, you know, heart attacks and this and that and the other. But this service is not promoted, and we need to promote it because we have it. It's a great service that it can be offered to the community, and unfortunately, many people are not aware of it, and we really need to make people be aware of it.
Couldn't agree more. And you know, out of all the avenues that we're using to promote it, just recently, since that update that was given to this commission, we worked with a contact that used to work for the school district. We approached the school district to somehow, if this was available as a senior project, to pass out flyers to the areas of our cities that are not getting notified through the water bill when we include the flyer with the multi-unit apartment complex, but the actual tenants aren't getting notified of it. So avenues like that are in the works. But yeah, to your point, we're trying all the means that we know to promote this, and that's where we're just trying to get it out word of mouth as well, to just start telling people by word of mouth. And we have seen an uptick. I will say that our applications to this year, this is the application process. We're starting that now. We've seen a significant uptick in the applicants. So the word is slowly getting out, and we're seeing that by an increase. So, you know, we can take some now, but I think there's a lot of work to do, because I agree with you. It's surprising to a lot of people when they get that bill, and you know, if they had an opportunity to sign up for this, they probably would have.
All right, thank you, Chief. And if any of my fellow commissioners have not taken the CERT training yet, I'd strongly encourage you to do it. All right, did Councilmember Cacciati ever join us online? No, okay. Let's move right to the staff liaison communications. Welcome back.
Just one quick update. Again, I want to keep giving updates on our recruitments. The last month, we said we were in the process. We have given 3 conditional job offers to 3 firefighter paramedics. They are all currently in backgrounds. They all accepted. One of them is a lateral from San Bernardino County Fire. The other 2 are entry level. One of them is a sponsor that we sponsored in the Fire Academy. So 3 in backgrounds, and that'll be, you know, that'll bring our department back to fully staffed once they vet backgrounds and bring them on the floor in late June. So.
All right, thanks, Chief.
It's been the fire department show here. It's on a couple things. One is Commissioner G and Commissioner Cervantes brought up our outreach efforts. And on behalf of the city, I know we're looking at our current online platform is a little challenging to navigate. So we are working through that. We're looking at a different vendor to create a new experience for the users so that it's easier to find what you're looking for. And I know it can be rather cumbersome and burdensome to try to navigate that. But if there's any suggestions that this commission has on how we can better outreach, we'd certainly appreciate hearing from that. As you can imagine, it's really hard to navigate through all the different social media platforms, traditional mail, online. So we're actually looking at what's the best way to reach our community. And I don't know that there's one simple answer. I think it's a variety of things, but we're really struggling right now to try to identify what mechanism would serve the best purpose. Surprisingly, we found out recently Twitter is really still significant. I would have thought personally, I'm not a social media person by any means, but I would have thought Twitter being a little outdated would be not the most advantageous. And what we're finding out is that is really one of the more significant platforms that people utilize, whereas maybe Facebook now is not. But if there's something that you're aware of or that you can help us identify, we would certainly appreciate that. Just to ride on the coattails of the fire department real quick, as far as our staffing levels, the police department, we are swearing in a new officer this afternoon, and certainly everyone in the commission and the community is invited. It'll be at 3 o'clock today here in the community or in the council chambers. But our staffing levels continue at the continuous rate that they are. We're still down by 11 positions. So if anybody that you know of is looking for a job in law enforcement, South Pasadena is a great place to start, and we're hiring at all different positions, from police officer to cadets, records, dispatchers. So we're always interested in people in the community and certainly outside the community too. But if you know someone who has that desire to serve their community and has a skill set, we'd certainly like to talk to them. Unfortunately, today we had another mass shooting. This one, I believe, is in Louisville, or Louisville, if you're from that area. Just to let the commission know and the community members know, the police department really pays attention and values the community input when we're looking at situations like this. And unfortunately, they happen all too often. So when they do happen, the police department reaches out to whatever that area of the affected community is, be it our faith-based, our business, or our commercial districts. And we try to offer active shooter training or resources that are available. So I offer that to this commission as well. This commission itself will be going through a series of training courses as Chief Riddle talked about emergency preparedness. That is part of our emergency preparedness. We'll be going through that sometime in the future, but we also offer that to our community. So if you know of a specific demographic of our community that is lacking in that or would like to see that, please let us know and we'll coordinate that training. You may have seen that if you haven't, there's a security guard now at the City Hall facility. So in order to enter City Hall, you have to identify yourself. We encourage an appointment, although not necessary. But there is a check-in process with badging that takes place. That is all part of this emergency preparedness, and the city is doing a security assessment on all the city facilities, certainly City Hall, the council chambers here, which would affect this commission as well. So the community will start to see some changes in that. And then also I attended a homeless update with the number of different city managers and city groups throughout Los Angeles County. I believe there's 88 attendees, and everyone seems to be having the same issue. And certainly South Pasadena is no exception when we talk about how do we deal with our unhoused, and then also how do we balance enforcement with humanitarian efforts. And it was Martin versus Boise, and really what I had with was overnight camping. And and I'll summarize this, is what the Supreme Court said is that sleeping and what basic necessity is a human need, and you couldn't penalize individuals or the unhoused for sleeping or camping per se in certain areas of the city if you didn't provide resources for them, those resources being shelters, emergency shelters. So we were talking about in this meeting I went to what those challenges were, and some of the local cities have created their own homeless shelters in order to enforce their quality of life, I'll call it, ordinances or laws that are related to overnight camping in parks or on public facilities. And there was some mixed feeling about the cost. Definitely, it is very expensive. And so that's one of the challenges that South is going through right now is we do not have facilities for our homeless shelters. We have some resources that we can offer, but what the court has said is you have to offer up to, or whatever your home is, you have to offer emergency shelter for up to 60% of those. So that's why our time count is so significant. So if we have a point in time count of 60 homeless, then we have to offer emergency shelter for up to 60% of them. That becomes very expensive to find where that 60%, where those beds are going to come from. A lot of people have said, well, we have Union Station, which is right up the street in Pasadena, and that is true, but they're also limited in the number of beds. And just like we would use them, Pasadena takes first dibs at them, and they have 200 plus homeless. 60% of that obviously is a lot, and all the surrounding cities that would use Union Station. So they quickly run out of resources. So now what we're using for our emergency shelter options is out in the City of Industry, which is a county facility. Of course, you can imagine how many people are trying to use that. So it really becomes an issue of funding, and more so than funding is finding available facilities, and there's just not enough around. So I bring this up because the police department continuously gets calls about enforcing our homeless ordinances or ordinances related to homeless, such as overnight camping, panhandling, and those type of things. We can handle those issues when it comes to panhandling or the day-to-day crime. Not that being homeless is a crime, I want to make that clear, but when we are talking about overnight camping, I get a lot of calls related to that from some of our residents who are walking through our parks in the morning. It is a tremendously challenging problem to solve. Certainly, it's not a law enforcement problem alone. It's a community problem. We need the resources from our public works, from our community, from our faith base. It really is a community problem that we need to tackle. Right now, though, the issue is really that case law. It's preventing law enforcement from enforcing that. And I'm not saying that that's the right answer. It is just one component of it, but it is certainly a challenge for law enforcement to address those overnight camping issues when we don't have either the facilities or the funding to provide those emergency shelter beds. I wanted to touch also on our vehicle fleet. I know Chief Riddle had talked about it with the purchase of his car. The police department has received all of our electric vehicles. They're going in shortly for some of them are already there. It takes a period of time for outfitting. What we consider outfitting is all the paint and the graphics, the emergency equipment, lights and sirens, and those type of things. Our goal is we will not deploy them frontline until we get the infrastructure in. I know there's some community questions at a recent city council meeting where people thought, well, hey, you put the cart before the horse because you got the cars, but you don't have the infrastructure. And I wanted to address that. We talked about it at the council, but I wanted to let the commission know we received the cars early from Tesla, earlier than we had anticipated. When we tried to do this project, and as you can imagine, this is a very large project going from a completely combustible engine fleet to an electric fleet. We try to correlate so that the path and the project run seamlessly side by side. That's the vehicles and the infrastructure, and sometimes one gets ahead of the other. We anticipated that, and that's why we had the vehicles, as I said, earlier than expected, but we're not deploying until we have the infrastructure to support them. We have issued some of the vehicles to our detectives and our administrative personnel. They're not frontline, obviously. They're not responding on the emergency calls for service. But with that understanding is we also have a Tesla charging center that's just outside of the city at the 110 freeway in Glenarm. And with the understanding that the employees that are using the Teslas right now, it's an option for them on how to implement the Teslas. So far, we haven't had any significant issues, just the typical learning curve as we're transitioning the fleet. We fully anticipated that. What we are expecting is to have the infrastructure completed by the end of the year. We'll have our cars back at the same time. We're trying to match that up so all the cars in the fleet are outfitted and ready to go when we turn on the switch for the charging infrastructure. So like I said, towards the end of the year, I don't want to put a specific date on it, but sometime in early fall. And it's working out very well. So if you are questioned by members of the community, one is I'm happy to answer any of those questions, but I wanted to provide you some background as well as where we are. And then lastly, the commission and council approved the flock cameras. That's the name brand, but they're really stationary automated license plate readers. Those are on 11 different points in the city, ingress and egress. They're installed. That's the first wave, the first 11. We haven't activated it yet. We're still building out the system. We anticipate sometime in the next week. I just want to let you know, we turned it on just to try it last week. And within the first 20 minutes, we had a stolen car coming through one of the city entrances and it alerted us right away. So we think it's going to be an extremely valuable tool, really a force multiplier. And from South Pasadena east to Pomona, just about every city has them. And we can access those camera and data information as well. So if we're looking for a specific criminal that we know is driving a certain vehicle, we can access those cameras and see when they cross through there. But more importantly, we can also use it to help save lives. And that is if we have a missing person or a critically injured person that's in a vehicle, we can also look for those specific cars too, and when they're coming across certain intersections and try to locate and triangulate them so that we can bring them to safety. So I know that's a lot of information in a short period of time. If anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer, but that is all I have so far. Yes, sir.
Chief, I have not a question, but rather a suggestion.
Sure.
And this is for the program that we were talking about with Chief Riddle about which was transportation to hospital. I think one of very good source to be contacted would be the senior center. They have a bulletin that they send out every month. I'm a member of that and I've been a commission there as well. So I know that's been put out. However, I think much more, that would be important to send out, to include that with the bulletin. However, more effective than that would be if in one of the meetings that they have several times a year, 4 or 5 times a year, luncheons and things. And one of the most attended one is the Mother's Day luncheon. And I would really encourage if available, one of our firemen to come and make a quick presentation on what is offered, as well as to tag on the heartstrings so the people who are in Delta with them. That would melt their hearts. So
Everybody
I
loves the
think
fire.
that would do it.
Absolutely.
You.
Thank you.
I have a question for you. You mentioned a security guard here at City Hall. Was there a specific incident that prompted that, or is this just a safer approach to having people come in?
Thank you. Great question. No, it's just a safer approach. As we're doing city safety facility assessments, that was one of the things that came out of it. We don't often, as close as the police department is, we don't always know what's going on in City Hall. And we want to ensure that we're being efficient in terms of our business, but we also want to provide a level of safety, not only for our residents and customers, but for our city staff. And that was one of the recommendations, is to have a security card there available. If anything, just to know who is in the building, who's coming and who's going, so that there was a check-in and check-out system. We have had, and I'm not gonna say this hasn't driven it, but we've had occasion where there have been people going into City Hall for nefarious reasons, either filming, looking at, trying to get access to certain documents. While there wasn't one specific incident, I think looking at it from a holistic point of view, that was just a good starting point. So for the residents, as you're coming in to do business with City Hall, they'll check in, indicate which facility, which department you're looking for. They'll have someone come down from that department, maybe not security-wise, but changes in the way the security is in terms of being more efficient, yet still providing that level of security and safety. And as we saw today, and certainly, unfortunately, every week, we're seeing shootings, mass shootings going up, not only at the workplace, but government officials. I think right now, statistically, is still the highest place for violence in terms of in the workplace for government employees, and also those that are visiting. So we're taking all that in consideration and just looking at everything that's going on around us. So trying to provide a safer, yet still efficient and welcoming.
I do have one question. Sorry. I have one question, one comment. My comment first is, we do have, just so you know, like 4 CEOs of homeless agencies that are long-term residents of South Pasadena. So I would just like to say that for all the complaints you have, I think we're all very supportive of knowing that there's not enough housing in our community. So I just want to put that side out there, because I think our city does well with the homeless, and And I think it's a community issue, but more it's a federal government and state government issue of not providing the resources necessary to help us support more than it's anything else legal or anything. But so that's my comment. And the other thing I wanted to know is you've been you and Allison have sent out announcements, press releases when there's been various crimes. And I'm just wondering how do you decide which ones you announce? Are they more egregious in the area? I mean, when I'm reading those, I just have that wonder of like, how do you decide which ones get sent as a notification?
What we usually do is look at the crimes that have this most significant impact to the community that we think the community would benefit from knowledge of from a safety perspective. Is this something that we want the community to know that's going on? Is there a trend that we're seeing? So is it a safety issue if it's fraudulent activity and there's something out there? If something of that nature. All the crimes are reported to the paper. The South Pasadena's puts it out, and I say that our local papers. I believe you'll find it online as well. I can't control what they put in there. Usually it's a summary, but if there's something significant that's a benefit to the community in terms of safety or preparedness, then that's what we'll put out.
Okay, I appreciate them. I just didn't know how.
Our goal is, and some people will say it's fear mongering. Our goal is really just to provide education and inform the community of the things that we're seeing. And to your point with the unhoused issues, this is really about education. So it's not pointing the blame at one specific entity. It's just challenges that the police department's facing. But I think the more that we're aware of what the challenges are and why things are or aren't being done, there's always more to it. So the more we can get that message out there and explain, especially with this Martin v. Boise, that specific case law really guides what the police department can and can't do. And I think the more people that understand that, one, frustration levels go down, but also I think it provides an opportunity for people to come together and talk about what are the other alternatives to solve the issue. So.
Thank you, Chief. So Commissioner Communications, Vice Chair Watson.
Nothing to report.
I don't have anything either. So it is 9:40. Let's adjourn the meeting. Thank you everyone for being here.